With the recent release of Ridley Scott's epic film, Napoleon Bonaparte is suddenly everywhere again. He's one of those figures in history who just looms large, a military genius who literally redrew the map of Europe. But his legacy? Well, it's anything but simple.
So, let's get right to the big question, the one historians still argue about today. Was Napoleon a hero who spread the ideals of the French Revolution, or was he a power-hungry villain who plunged an entire continent into war? To even begin to answer that, we have to unravel the man behind the myth, and his story starts in a place you probably wouldn't expect.
To really understand the man, we have to go right back to the beginning. Because, get this, Napoleon wasn't even technically French, and his identity as an outsider is the key to his entire story.
He was born back in 1769 on the island of Corsica, right after it had been sold to France. As a kid, he was a die-hard Corsican nationalist, and he idolized a local freedom fighter. But then his own father switched sides and cozied up to the French king, an act Napoleon saw as a complete betrayal. That connection, though, is what got him a scholarship to a French military college.
And it's this isolation that really forged his ambition. Can you imagine? He was mocked by all the French aristocrats for his thick accent. He didn't find comfort with his peers. Instead, he found it in books, just devouring stories about history's greatest conquerors, guys like Caesar and Alexander the Great. He wasn't just dreaming of fitting in. He was dreaming of surpassing them all.
And boy, he did not have to wait long to prove himself. During the French Revolution, at the Siege of Toulon, a 24-year-old Napoleon comes up with this genius artillery strategy that completely wins the day. His commanders were floored. He was immediately promoted to brigadier general. The outsider was now a bona fide rising star.
So as his power grows, Napoleon starts leading these huge campaigns outside of France. And this is where the first major contradiction really shows up. Was he liberating people, or was he just conquering them for his own glory? This is what he actually told the people of Italy as his army marched in. He painted himself as this champion of the people, a liberator, coming to free them from the old monarchies of Europe. And you know what? For a while, a lot of people believed him.
But here's the twist. He gave his soldiers super strict orders not to loot or pillage. Very disciplined. At the exact same time, though, he organized this massive, state-sanctioned heist of priceless art from every territory he conquered. His goal? To fill up a grand museum in Paris, which he eventually, and not so humbly, named the Musée Napoléon.
His ambition took him all the way to Egypt, where he was hoping to mess with British trade routes. Militarily, the campaign was a total disaster. The British Navy just crushed his fleet. But it wasn't a total loss. The 160 scholars he brought with him made a monumental discovery, the Rosetta Stone, the key that would finally let us understand ancient Egyptian hieroglyphics.
Okay. Think about that for a second. He literally abandoned his army and fled a catastrophic defeat. But when he gets back to France, he's treated like a conquering hero. How is that even possible? Well, it all comes down to one word: propaganda. Napoleon was an absolute master at controlling his own story.
And this painting is the perfect example of his method. He commissioned art, like this famous one by Jacques-Louis David, showing him heroically leading his army across the Alps on this magnificent horse. It's an image that just screams power, control, and destiny.
But that powerful image, the one that has defined him for generations, was a complete fabrication. The reality? He crossed that treacherous pass on a humble mule wrapped up in a simple gray coat. This contrast between the myth and the reality is pure Napoleon. He wasn't just conquering territory, he was conquering public opinion.
So now that he's conquered public opinion, he sets his sights on conquering France itself. And this is where the hero and villain labels collide most dramatically, as he uses all that manufactured popularity to seize absolute power.
And he wasn't shy about it either. He once said, "Power is my mistress." I mean, this wasn't some hidden agenda. He was openly declaring his hunger for control.
To make his coup seem legitimate, he held a referendum, and the official result was, well, it was staggering. A supposed 99.9% voted in his favor. 2 years later, he asked for more power, to be made consul for life, and again the people apparently agreed, with an almost unbelievable 99.7% yes vote.
And finally, in 1804, the big one. Should he become emperor? The result? Once again, a near unanimous 99.9%.
So were the French people just that devoted? Not even close. It was all a sham.
Historians have shown these referendums were complete frauds. That first vote wasn't 99.9%, it was actually closer to a 50-50 split. His own brother, the Minister of the Interior, simply manufactured the results. Napoleon didn't win power, he fabricated it.
And this gets to the very heart of his contradictory legacy. Because on one hand, he was a brilliant reformer. He gave France the Napoleonic Code, a modern legal system still influential today. He established the Bank of France, ended feudalism, and modernized education. But on the other hand, he crowned himself emperor, reinstated slavery in the colonies, stripped away many rights women had gained during the Revolution, and shut down any newspaper that dared to criticize him.
This blend of genius and hubris just couldn't last forever. His relentless ambition would ultimately lead to his downfall and the collapse of his entire empire.
The beginning of the end was his catastrophic invasion of Russia in 1812. The brutal winter and Russian tactics just destroyed his army. A coalition of European powers then defeated him at Leipzig. He was exiled to the island of Elba, but he escaped, returned to France for a brief 100 days before his final, legendary defeat at Waterloo. He died in his second, much more remote exile on the island of St. Helena.
So after all of that, the rise, the reforms, the tyranny, the fall, how do we judge him? What is his ultimate legacy?
And this is where judging him gets so difficult, because his positive impacts were profound and they were long-lasting. The Napoleonic Code is the foundation of the legal system in dozens of countries. He swept away the remnants of feudalism across Europe, established modern banking and civil service systems, and championed secular government. In a strange twist, this emperor's conquests helped spread the revolutionary ideas of liberty and equality.
In the end, there's no easy answer. He was a brilliant modernizer who dragged Europe out of an old world. And he was a ruthless tyrant whose wars cost millions of lives. So the question remains, and it's one for you to decide. Who was the real Napoleon? The hero or the villain? You know, perhaps the only certain answer is that he was both.